It's time to create the database object for the database called eTail. We have already created the database eTail and also the schema called eTail_trn. Right now, you're viewing the script which I've already created earlier for the tables like user, buyer, and seller. Now, we have to create these objects inside the schema called eTail_trn. So if you look at the script, it's a generic create table script, which is none other than the DDL, data definition language. So we use the schema as a prefix to refer that this table is going to be part of the schema. Like which we also have the list of comments, where each comments is going to be referred to the columns that are going to be created under this table. As I've already stated, comments are very essential to understand the base information about a specific field or a column in the table. And also you can notice that we have a buyer table. I have a script created for buyer and its comments for the columns, and also the reference that we need to create between the buyer and the user. User table stands as the parent table, where the buyer table is going to refer to the user table. So I have the constraint added to the buyer table referring to the parent table called user and its column called user_id. So this is generic to a foreign key and a primary key references. And also you can notice that we have the seller table script is ready, and the table has a seller ID which refers to a primary key, and the comments for all the columns that's been listed in this seller table, and also the reference that need to be created with the foreign key and the primary key relationship between the seller and the user. So this is a whole sum of script that we have for the three tables called user, buyer, and seller. We already discussed that this eTail system is currently going to have 13 tables as per the data dictionary that we have designed. So this is the data dictionary where we have listed 13 tables, and out of this 13 tables, as in a first step, we are going to create 3 tables: the user table, the buyer table, and the seller table. So if you look at the user table, we have the details about the logical field, physical field, the data type, the nullability, and also the description. So this is what I've consumed. The details what we have in the data dictionary is what I've consumed here in the script. So as you can notice, based on the data dictionary details that we have, on top of that only I've created the script. So it's always essential whenever we design an application, we need to ensure that we start with the data dictionary before we start generating the real-time database scripts. So let's quickly go ahead and drop these scripts, and we will create the 3 tables that we have listed in the script. As we go along with the development of this eTail system, we'll be introducing more script for more database objects which are listed in the data dictionary. So let's quickly copy this details starting from the create table structure and all the way go down to the end of the comments. So we'll create one by one. So let's bring the pgadmin tool. As you notice that we already have the eTail database available. Underneath the eTail database, we have the schema, and the schema that we have created here is eTail_trn. So what we have to do right now is we need to right click on this schema or anywhere from the database. We will be having the option called query tool. So we can click on the query tool, and this will open a query tool area where we will be able to write some scripts and start executing them. So let's drop the query that we have copied right now. So these are the scripts that we are going to run right away. So it all the way starts from the creation of the table, where we prefixing it with the schema name, which is none other than the eTail_trn, and we have the user table, we have the list of columns highlighted here and their respective data types, and also the constraints that it holds. Now, if you notice, every table that we are going to create are going to carry these two columns, which is going to be a common across all tables: the created timestamp and the updated timestamp. So when this record is going to be created and when it gets updated, so that information need to be captured, which will be an informational detail as we go and analyze the data in the near futures. So we also have a list of comments I've highlighted here for every table. For every column in the table, we need to add comments. So the necessity of the comments I've already explained. So this gives more information about the table and as well as the column in it. So we start with the user, and that's nothing but the user table itself, as you can notice here. Then we have the user ID. So here we have the user ID. We'll copy the user ID and we'll drop in here, as the comments for this is missing. So I'm going to say comment on column. The first one is for the table comments. The second one is starting for the columns that are part of this table. So comment on column called the eTail underscore trn dot the table name. So here what we have is the schema name, and then we have the table name, and then followed with the column name. So the column name is nothing but the user ID. So user ID is what? A unique identifier for the user table, and this field is the table primary key and cannot be null. So such informations we can capture in each and every column and refer it to a comments. So at later point of time, whenever we have to look at the column, we will get to know what this column is all about, and if there is any constraint for this column, can also be briefed on it. So let's go ahead and try executing the script and see if they are getting executed successfully. So here we have the execute the command. So we can just go ahead and select all and say execute, and there is an error, as we can notice. So comment on column eTail user ID is having a challenge. So let's quickly go ahead and see what's the problem here. So comment on column, and that means so somewhere we are missing the command. The proper command is not given, so it is like we need to end with is. So it means comment on column, the specific column name is the actual comment that we need to define. Execute it. So here it says query returned successfully in 43 milliseconds. So means the table got created and their respective comments are also created. So now let's go ahead and look at this schema. Just click on the refresh of the schema, expand it. You will have the table section where we have the table got created, the user table. So right click this user table and go to the properties of it, and you will notice that there is a presence of the table name and also the comments here. As you can notice that here we have the comments for the table, and also the column section will give you the details about all the columns that we have created right away, and their data types and their length is also listed out here. So you can notice that user ID is alone not null, which is enabled, and that's going to be called as a primary key as well. And we have the edit arrow here, edit icon here. If you just click on this edit icon, you can notice that the comment for the column is also present. So if you want to capture some information about a specific column in a table, you can just come all the way here on the properties of the table, and you can click on the columns section or the columns tab to view all the list of columns of the specific table, like user here. And if you click on the edit icon of the specific column, you will notice that there is there's a comments are defined, and other essential informations can be captured from here on. So to summarize, what we have done here is we have just created the table. That means the database object for the database eTail, and we have created the very first table called user. So like which we can go ahead and create the other tables. The other two tables that we need is buyer. So I can select the buyer table and go all the way to the constraints and select the script for the buyer table, and let's copy paste it here. And we can notice that we have additionally the alter table command for adding the foreign key constraint for this buyer table, referring to the parent table called the user table and the column called user ID. So let's again select all and execute it. So it says the command got executed successfully. Then let's copy for the seller table script and all the way go down to the reference, copy them and paste it here. So what happens is we are going to create the third table, the seller table. So we have user, buyer and seller. So buyer and seller are the variants of the user. So that's where we keep the user as the base, and where we have the two child tables or the reference tables like the seller and the buyer. So let's execute this script as well. Just click on execute. It got executed in 40 milliseconds. So that means we have successfully created the other two tables as well by creating the base table first, which is user. So here we have the seller and the buyer table. So just right click on the seller, go to the properties, and here you can see the comments for the seller table as well. And look at the columns. We have all the columns created and the primary key is defined here. So successfully we have created three tables. Now it's all the way that we go ahead and start developing our backend application using the Spring Boot